Are Artify markers and Hoo markers as well good as Copic markers? Let's find out. So I decided to compare these three kind of markers because today you actually can find other brush markers on the market and not only the Copic markers. Copic markers are great, but they do cost a lot of money. I own a lot of Copic markers, but I have not been using them a lot exactly because they are expensive, and every time I take them I'm like, I don't want to color with them because they are expensive, and that's a shame because when you do have some supplies you should use them. But as in my case, I think there are other people who then do not want to use them because they did pay a lot of money for them. So I think a good alternative would be, so it would be good to find an alternative, and I think Ohuhu and Artify markers are the best choice. Because I own only portrait set from the Artify markers, I had to choose these lighter colors, but I really wanted to use almost the same colors from all three brands. For another test, I will do coloring of some balloons, and there I will also try to use a little bit darker, let's say, colors like a pink. I know it's not a dark one, but in the how to say, in the portrait set there are not a lot of dark colors from the Artify. I also found it really interesting that the Ohuhu and Copic marker had the same names on their markers. So that was a little bit interesting. So they were probably copying the Copic markers. So these are the ones that I will be using for the coloring later. And the paper that I'm using is the Cans on the Wall. So I really like this marker paper. It's not the usual thin paper because those 70 GSM papers are, I mean, they are nice, but they are so thin, and if you touch your paper a couple of times, it will go ruin. This is another paper that I also really like, and it's also a thick paper for for markers. So I think I will do another video where I compare these different brands of paper that I'm using, because I also did buy a lot of different paper blocks until I found the right ones. And of course, the other one that is really good and I'm using is the Expressit Copic paper. The first markers in the test will be the Copic ones, and I have the Copic Sketch and the Copic Chow. So I do have the same colors, if I remember right, from these two. So I will also compare the Copic Sketch to Copic Chow and then to Hoo and Artify markers. The brush of the Copic Chow and Copic Sketch markers is really soft, but still you can really draw really nicely and color with it, and I really like it. So what I did here, I just drew a circle, colored it to see if there will be some lines left inside, and also I will see how now some flickering, how does it mix with the rest of the circle. And I will do this for all other markers, and then I will make some remarks again. I was really positively surprised by the Artify markers. As you can see here, from the circle, between the circle and the lines that I drew, there is almost no transition. I mean, the transition is so good. There are no lines, but as you can see with the Copic Chow and also Copic Sketch, you see the difference from where I ended the circle and when I drew the lines. So in this case, for me, definitely Artify markers win. And also the Ohuhu markers are also pretty well. But I have to say Artify in this case, in my opinion and for what I like, they had the best results. The mixing of two colors was no problem at all for the Copic markers, not for the sketch or the chow. So that was really seamless. I really liked how the colors mixed and how fast I achieved that result. For the other markers, Ohuhu and Artify, I did have to go a couple of more times over the same spot to blend the colors, but still at the end the result was also satisfying. So really have to say the Ohuhu and Artify markers come really close to the Copic markers. There is one thing that unfortunately happens with all the markers that I have. As you can see these spots on the paper, so when I take off the cap, I forget to do it not above the paper directly, but yeah, sometimes I still do it and there are these splashes of color which land on my paper. So that is something you do have to pay attention to. I, as you can see, forgot again about it. And also you will see in the painting, which I did, it happened the same with the Ohuhu markers. So unfortunately, that is something to take attention about. So when you are coloring, try to think about it to take the caps of I noticed that I made a mistake. I colored away from up there drawing. With the Copic Chow markers. Sorry for that, but still you can you can see it. I did not do the Copic sketch at all because I do not have the pink color from the Copic sketch. I only have the portrait colors, so the flash colors. So that's why I did not do the Copic sketch at all. But I made a note that the upper one is the Copic Chow. So now we are at the Huhu markers. But again, I have to say, I am completely surprised how well these markers work. And as you can see here, again, there will be a nice transition. You just have to work a little bit more. And I was not really paying attention of staying, let's say, inside of the lines. So lines, let's say one brightness, one width of the line, because as you can see here in the middle is becoming larger and larger. That's not because these markers bleed or something like that. I think it's called bleed or feathering. I think it's called feathering. I'm actually not sure how you say that in English, but as you see in the middle, there is a little bit larger space where I colored, but that's just because I did not pay attention at all. So I was just coloring. What I found is interesting here is that Copic markers, they worked fine on this paper, but still there was some white grain which was visible, and you can see it also here, but that was not the case with the Huhu markers, and the Huhu markers worked really well on this paper. And this paper is much cheaper than the Expressit cards from the Copic. So I would say if you are using the Ohuhu markers, this would be the best paper to use. Also, the Artify markers were really good at on this paper. The other positive thing about this paper is that it is not bleed, that it is bleed proof. That means there is nothing on the other side. So if you really want, you can also color on the other side because the color does not go through. Another thing that I'd like to check is to see how well the color lifts up when you are using the colorless blender, because the colorless blender is actually not really a blender. So if you use it to blend two colors, you will see that you will not succeed, because it does not work like that. What I use it is to lift up the color, and also you will see here the small mistake that I did. I mean the drop of the color. You can still remove it to some extent with this colorless blender. You do have to go a couple of times over it, but it will be much lighter than before. So I did the same test with the Ohuhu and the Artify colorless blender, so you can see for yourself how well it worked. And in my opinion, they do work. So the Ohuhu and the Artify colorless blender, but the Copic one is the best one. So I would actually suggest, if you do buy the cheaper markers, I would suggest you just to buy the original Copic colorless blender, because that one really works well also with other markers, and it does lift the color the best from every marker. So as you can see here in this drawing, I just lifted up a little bit of the color to give some life to the balloons and shine. So I did another test and tried to remove the other two spots, with the one with the Ohuhu colors blender and the third spot with the Artify colors blender, and I was not able to do it. So the color remained almost the same. But as you will see, the one where I used the Copic colorless blender, the color did, let's say, was removed for a good amount. I would definitely buy the Artify or Huhu markers over Copic markers, because they do cost a lot less than the other ones. But I would just buy the colorless blender from the Copic markers. So that would be a really nice thing to do. So I hope again you enjoyed it, and see you next time. Bye.